The EI is never quiet, but that night it felt heavier than usual, like the building itself was bracing for something. A thunderstorm rattled the windows, rain hammering the glass in frantic bursts. The power had flickered twice already, and the generators hummed like restless giants in the basement. I was midway through suturing a teenager's laceration when the trauma doors burst open. Paramedics pushed in a gurney, voices sharp over the storm. Male, mid-40s, collapse at home, unresponsive en route, possible cardiac arrest. We snapped into rhythm. The boy I'd been stitching was quickly wheeled to observation, and my team fell on the new arrival. He was pale, drenched in rainwater, shirt clinging to his chest. Tubes, IVs, oxygen mask, all the usual flurry of interventions. Pulse? I asked. Thready, Marta answered, pressing fingers to his wrist. Barely there. Get the monitor on him. Epi ready. I leaned close, checking his pupils, and that was when his eyes flickered open. Just for a second. Clouded, unfocused, but they locked on me. Not the room, not the lights, me. His lips parted. The sound that came out was barely a whisper, but it cut through the storm, the monitors, the chaos. Myra. I froze. The name hit me like a physical blow. My hands faltered on the laryngoscope. What did you say? His chest hitched, air rattling in his throat. Myra. He exhaled, the word dissolving into a rasp. His eyes rolled back. Marta glanced at me. Doctor, did he say? Compress, I snapped, forcing the word out. Now. We worked furiously, but my mind wasn't in my hands anymore. Myra, my mother's name. A name this man could not possibly know. We shocked him once, twice, 3 times. For a moment, his rhythm stabilized, then plummeted again. The monitor flatlined with that piercing tone that always manages to sound like accusation. Time of death, 2:14, Marta said quietly. I stood back, gloves dripping, adrenaline still burning. The storm growled outside, lightning illuminating the pale body on the table. Myra, my mother, alive and well, sitting in her apartment 2 neighborhoods away. How could a stranger, a dying man, know her name, let alone whisper it at me with such intent? I pulled off my gloves, the snap too loud in the silence that followed. My reflection in the trauma bay glass looked pale, startled, as though I'd just seen myself from a distance. And then, faint as breath against my ear, I heard it again. Myra. But the patient was still. His lips hadn't moved. The storm outside swallowed the hospital in restless noise, wind slamming the glass, thunder rattling the ceiling tiles, but inside Trauma 2, everything was still. Too still. The patient's body lay covered, the sheet drawn up to his chin. His face, slack and pale, seemed ordinary now, just another life the aide couldn't save. Yet the echo of his voice clung to me like static, replaying in my head, louder each time. Myra. I pulled off my gown, tossed it into the biohazard bin, and stepped into the hall. Marta followed, her brow furrowed. Doctor. Did I hear that right? He said a name? I swallowed hard. Patients mumble all sorts of things in extremis. Could have been anything. She tilted her head. But it sounded like coincidence. I cut her off more sharply than I meant to. My own voice startled me. I walked away before she could press. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. I shoved them into my coat pockets as I made my way toward the staff lounge, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The lounge was empty. I dropped into a chair, pulled out my phone, and dialed the one number I'd been resisting. It rang twice, and her voice, warm and familiar. Sweetheart? Why are you calling so late? Relief loosened my chest. Hi, Mom. Just wanted to hear your voice. Everything all right at work? She asked. I hesitated. How could I tell her? That a stranger had looked into my eyes? and spoken her name as his last word? That his whisper had carried something colder than coincidence? "Everything's fine," I lied. "Just a long night." We chatted briefly mundane things, grounding things. I clung to her voice, memorizing every syllable. When I hung up, the silence pressed in heavier than before. The hallway outside groaned. Not with thunder, but something closer, like the sound of someone dragging a wet sheet along the floor. I peeked out. Empty. The linoleum gleamed under harsh lights, untouched, but faint smears dotted the tiles. Wet footprints. Bare, leading away from Trauma 2. My stomach turned. I followed them only a few steps before stopping. They ended at the glass doors of radiology. Condensation clung to the pane, fogged in an oval shape, as though someone had leaned close, breathing against it. And traced there in the fog, letters scrawled with an unseen finger, was one word: MYRA. The automatic door hissed open on its own, though no one was there. The glass door slid open with its familiar hydraulic sigh, but the air that spilled out wasn't familiar at all. Damp, heavy. It smelled faintly of mildew, like clothes forgotten in a washing machine. I froze in the doorway, every instinct screaming at me to turn back. Still, my feet edged forward, as if something invisible tugged me inside. Radiology was dark, machines asleep, their monitors faintly glowing. Shadows stretched long and unnatural across the floor. The smudged footprints I'd followed from the hallway continued ahead, slick and shimmering in the dim light. "Hello?" My voice cracked the silence. "Security?" No answer. Just the hum of idle equipment and the soft drip of water. I moved deeper, past the CT room, until I reached the far end of the corridor. The footprints stopped at the door to the MRI suite. The handle glistened wet, though no one had touched it. I pushed. The door creaked, heavy, resisting me like it didn't want to open. Inside, the MRI room was colder still, the temperature biting against my damp scrubs. The machine loomed like a white sarcophagus, silent and waiting, and then I heard it. A whisper, clear, close. "Myra." My throat clenched. The voice came from inside the machine. I forced my legs forward, pulse hammering. The bore of the MRI was empty. No patient. Just shadows stretching in unnatural directions. Yet the whisper came again, louder now, reverberating in the chamber. "Myra." This time, it wasn't the voice of the dying man. It was my mother's. I staggered back, slamming into the wall. My phone buzzed in my pocket, violent, insistent. I yanked it out. Mom flashed on the screen. Hands trembling, I answered. "Mom?" Static hissed. Then her voice, faint and panicked. "Why are you calling me from here?" The call cut off. The MRI lights flickered, and in that strobe of white, I saw it. A figure lying perfectly still inside the machine. Bare feet, pale skin, arms crossed over the chest. A body I recognized instantly. It was my mother, and her lips were moving, whispering my name. I couldn't breathe. My mother's face stared back at me from inside the MRI bore, lips moving silently, eyes half closed like she was caught in some restless sleep. The storm outside cracked the building with thunder, but all I could hear was her faint whisper, my name over and over, spilling into the sterile room. "No," I rasped, stumbling forward. "This isn't real. It can't be." The machine groaned. Not the gentle hum of electronics powering on, but a deep metallic wail, as though the magnet itself were straining under some unbearable weight. The lights overhead flickered again, plunging the room into stuttering bursts of white and shadow. When the strobe hit, I saw her hands twitch, then her feet. And before I could move, she began to slide out of the machine, not on the motorized table, but with her own body, dragging herself forward. Nails scraped against the padded surface, leaving long dark streaks that glistened wet. My heart slammed. Mom? My voice cracked, desperate, childish. The figure kept pulling. Her face was pale, water dripping from her hair as though she had been submerged. Each movement was jerky, unnatural, like a puppet tugged by invisible strings. When she reached the edge of the bore, her head turned toward me. Her eyes snapped open fully, clouded white yet locking onto mine with terrible precision. Her lips parted. And she said it again. Not my name this time, Myra. The word burst from her throat like a gurgle of river water. I staggered back, slamming into the wall. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. I yanked it out with shaking hands. Mom flashed once more. I swiped the call open, tears in my eyes. Mom, are you? Her voice came sharp and terrified. Why are you whispering my name? Why do you sound like you're drowning? The line went dead. I lifted my gaze. The figure had pulled itself fully free of the machine now, bare feet slapping the wet tile. Water pooled beneath her, spreading outward in rivulets that reached my shoes. She raised one trembling hand toward me. Her mouth widened into a grotesque smile. You promised you'd never let me die. My back pressed flat against the cold wall, every instinct screaming run. Yet my legs refused to obey. The figure my mother, but not stood dripping before me, head tilted, smile stretched too wide. Her voice rolled out, wet and broken. You promised you'd never let me die. Lightning flashed outside, painting the room in white for a heartbeat. In that flash, her features warped, cheeks hollow, lips cracked, water streaming from her eyes like tears. When the light faded, she looked normal again. Almost. My throat tightened. You're not her. The figure cocked its head. Water dribbled from its chin. Aren't I? Don't you recognize your own blood? The floor squelched beneath my shoes. I glanced down. Water pooled higher now, soaking the hem of my scrubs. Each ripple spread outward, carrying whispers that hissed in unison. Myra, Myra. I shoved myself off the wall and bolted for the door. The handle was slick, resisting me. Behind me, the figure's wet feet slapped against the tile, faster, closer. My pulse thrashed in my ears. I yanked hard, the door groaned open, and I stumbled into the hall. The corridor stretched long and empty, the fluorescence above buzzing faintly. But the wet footprints followed immediately, smearing fresh across the linoleum. Myra. The voice echoed from every direction now behind me. Ahead, even seeping from the intercom speakers. I ran, past radiology, past the lounge, past the nurse's station. Marta caught sight of me, eyes wide. Doctor? What happened? Why are you soaked? I tried to answer, but the words stuck in my throat. Over her shoulder, I saw condensation fogging across the window to Trauma 2. Letters scrawled themselves in the mist even as I watched. YRA. Marta spun, gasped. Who did that? The hall lights flickered. For an instant, every glass surface monitors, windows, even the polished floor, showed her face. My mother's face, whispering the same word, Myra. When the lights steadied, the reflections were gone, but the wet footprints kept advancing toward us. Marta grabbed my arm. Doctor, who's Myra? I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, the power cut out. The hall plunged into black. And in the darkness, water began rushing down the corridor, fast and heavy, like a river breaking loose. The roar of water filled the corridor, surging toward us with impossible force. Marta screamed, pulling at my arm, but the flood was already at our ankles, cold as ice, dragging us backward with every step. This isn't real. I shouted over the torrent, though the words sounded hollow. My shoes slipped, splashing through water that reeked of mildew and iron. Marta clung to my sleeve, eyes wide with terror. It feels real. The fluorescence flickered once, sputtered, then went black. Only the red glow of the exit signs lit the rushing hall. The water rose higher, swirling around our knees, carrying stray papers and medical gloves like debris swept from shore. And then, under the roar, came the whisper, clear, close. Myra. I spun. The voice wasn't behind us. It was right at my ear. The breath that carried it was warm against my skin, though the floodwater was freezing. I shoved Marta toward the stairwell. Go. She hesitated. Not without go, my voice cracked. She finally turned, wading desperately through the water. I stayed, chest heaving, forcing myself to stillness. The flood pressed against my thighs now, but the whisper didn't fade. Another flash of lightning lit the hall through the storm-battered windows. In that split second of light, the water wasn't empty. Dozens of faces stared up from beneath its surface pale, drowned, eyes open, mouths working silently. And every one of them was my mother. I staggered back, choking on panic. The storm outside bellowed. The hospital shuddered. The drowned faces pressed closer, the water bubbling with their muffled cries. I slammed my palms against my ears, screaming, "Stop it! You're not her!" For a moment, the flood went utterly still. The drowned faces blurred, dissolved into blackness. Silence pressed in, so tight, I thought my skull would split. Then one voice, singular, cut through the dark. "But I will be." The water surged upward, crashing into me like a living thing. It filled my nose, my throat, my chest. I thrashed, gasping for air, but there was none only that voice, wrapping itself around me. The last thing I saw before the lights died completely was Marta, at the end of the hall, framed by the stairwell door. She was screaming my name, and then the current pulled me under. Cold, crushing, endless. When I opened my eyes, the hospital was still around me, but wrong. The corridor stretched the same length, lined with the same doors, but all of it lay submerged beneath black water. Papers floated like jellyfish. 4 bags drifted overhead. Monitors flickered faintly, as if powered by some drowned current. I floated weightless, hair drifting around my face, every breath a burning ache in my chest. Yet somehow, impossibly, I wasn't choking. I was breathing the water, each inhale thick and metallic, filling my lungs with liquid weight. The exit signs still glowed red, distorted through the shifting waves. Their arrows pointed not up, not down, but inward, deeper into the submerged hospital. Myra. The whisper rippled through the water, coming from every direction. Bubbles traced words along the walls, forming the letters of my mother's name before dissolving. I swam, or thought I swam, though the current seemed to carry me whether I moved or not. The hall opened into the trauma bays, their curtains drifting like seaweed. Bodies floated inside, pale and still, tubes and wires tangling around them. I pressed closer to one. Its eyes snapped open. White, cloudy. It mouthed the words soundlessly, releasing a stream of bubbles. Myra. I jerked back. The curtain billowed, and another face appeared. And another. Every bed held a version of her. My mother, duplicated endlessly, floating in silence, their gazes fixed on me. I kicked hard, panic tearing through me. The current shifted, dragging me toward radiology again. The MRI suite loomed, its bore wide like a black tunnel. Light pulsed inside it, faint and beckoning, and there she was. One figure this time, not dozens. My mother, or something wearing her face, waiting inside the machine, hands folded across her chest. Her lips moved, and though no sound reached me, the word bloomed in my head like a drowning memory. Myra. I covered my ears, but it was useless. The word wasn't outside, it was inside me. The fire truck drifted past my shoulder, its wheels spinning, siren muffled beneath the water. It circled once, then angled toward the MRI bore, slipping inside as if returning home. My mother's double lifted her head. Her eyes opened wide, locking on mine. And then she spoke not just in my head this time, but through the water itself, vibrating every bone in my body. "You can't keep me out." The MRI bore glowed faintly, pulsing like the mouth of some deep-sea creature. The fire truck floated just inside it, wheels turning slowly, siren whining with every rotation. My mother's figure lay beyond, waiting, her hair drifting in the water like black seaweed. I should have swum upward, toward escape, but when I tilted my head back, there was no surface, no ceiling, no air above. Just endless black water, stretching forever. The only light came from the MRI. The only path was toward her. I kicked forward, each stroke heavy as though the water itself resisted me. The closer I came, the louder her whisper grew, not in my ears, not even in my head, but in my chest, vibrating through my ribs. "Myra, Myra." I reached the opening. Cold poured from it, colder than the rest of the water, wrapping around my arms and legs like chains. The fire truck bobbed once more, then disappeared into the darkness beyond her. Her eyes snapped open, cloudy white, yet blazing with intent. She rose, crawling out of the bore, not as a swimmer, but as something dragged forward by invisible strings. Her hands reached for me, fingers long and trembling. "Come home," she mouthed, bubbles spilling from her lips. I shook my head violently, chest burning though the water still filled it. "You're not her." Her smile stretched. "Then why do you hear me when she calls?" She lunged. I kicked backward, slamming into the chamber wall. Her fingers grazed my wrist, icy cold, leaving pale marks that glowed faintly in the water. The fire truck circled us both now, faster and faster, siren warping into something more human. A cry, a child's cry, my cry. Suddenly, the floor gave way beneath me. The MRI chamber collapsed into a black chute, dragging me downward like a whirlpool. The figure of my mother vanished above, reaching but receding, her face twisting in rage. The water roared in my ears. I tumbled end over end, ripped through darkness until I slammed against solid ground. The water was gone. I lay gasping on the E-floor, soaked to the bone, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead as if nothing had changed. Marta stood nearby, frozen, her face pale. "Doctor," she whispered. "Where have you been?" My breath caught. "What do you mean?" She pointed to the clock on the wall. 3 hours had passed. I struggled to sit up, scrubs clinging to my skin as if I'd been hauled from a river. Marta stood just out of reach, her eyes wide, trembling as though she wasn't sure I was real. "You were gone," she whispered. I saw you pulled under." The hall was flooding, and then she shook her head, voice breaking. "Then it was like you disappeared." "I was here the whole time," I rasped, though even I didn't believe it. My lungs still burned as if full of water. "No," she insisted, backing against the wall. "I watched you sink into the floor." Her words made my skin crawl. Before I could answer, a metallic sound ticked against the tile. Tink, tink, tink. I turned my head. The fire truck sat 3 feet away, perfectly upright, water dripping steadily from its wheels. The ladder twitched once, like a finger beckoning. Marta gasped. "How did that get here?" I crawled toward it, hand shaking. My initials MGG were carved deeper now, gouged so violently the edges still looked raw. The toy was warm to the touch, pulsing faintly, like it had a heartbeat. The siren whined once, sharp enough to make Marta flinch. "I know this toy," I whispered. "It was mine. I lost it when I was a child." Marta's gaze darted between me and the truck. Then how is it here? I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because in that moment, the intercom above us crackled to life, though no one had paged. A voice wet, distorted filled the hall. Mira. Marta slapped her hands over her ears. That's your mother's name, isn't it? My chest tightened. Yes. The fire truck's wheels spun wildly, splattering water across the floor. The sound of rushing currents returned, echoing down the hall. And from trauma 2, where the dead patient's body lay covered, came a cough. Wet. Gurgling. Marta's face drained of color. Doctor, he's dead. The sheet on the gurney twitched. And from beneath it, in my mother's voice, came a whisper. Come back to me. The sheet shifted again, slow and deliberate, like someone struggling to sit up. A wet cough rattled the silence. Marta clutched my arm, nails digging into my sleeve. Don't, she whispered. Don't touch it. But I had to. My pulse thundered in my ears, if I even had one anymore, and I forced myself forward. My hands trembled as I gripped the edge of the sheet. With one hard pull, I tore it away. The dead man lay exactly where we'd left him. Skin waxy, eyes closed, chest still. But clutched against his sternum, where no one had placed it, was the fire truck. Its wheels spun in frantic bursts, spraying drops onto his lifeless body. Then his mouth opened, not in a gasp, not in a twitch, wide, too wide. Water gushed out, pouring over his cheeks, soaking the mattress. His lips moved, and my mother's voice poured from his throat. Myra. Marta screamed, stumbling backward into a tray of instruments. Metal clattered to the floor. I froze, my breath caught in my chest. The man's eyes snapped open, clouded white. His gaze locked on me, unblinking. The sound that came next wasn't my mother's voice, but my voice as a child. You promised you'd never let her die. The lights flickered. For an instant, every patient in the A sat upright, eyes open, mouths moving in unison. The whisper rose like a tide, flooding the room. Myra, Myra. Marta staggered toward me, tears streaking her cheeks. Doctor, we have to leave. Now. I grabbed her arm, dragging her toward the exit. But the floor was slick beneath us. Water seeped from the gurneys, from the walls, even from the ceiling tiles. Each drop carried whispers, voices blending into one unbearable chorus. We stumbled into the hallway. The exit sign glowed faintly red, a beacon. But as we neared it, every door lining the corridor burst open at once. Patients living, dead, restrained poured out, all whispering the same word. Myra. Their voices were a single organism, a lung that breathed only her name. Marta sobbed. Why are they saying it? Why do they all know? I didn't answer, because I finally understood. It wasn't just the dying man. It wasn't just the figure in the MRI. The whole hospital was infected. Every breath, every whisper, every body. And all of it moving. We ran, slipping across the wet linoleum, the echo of whispers chasing us down the corridor. Every door we passed burst open, patients staggering out like sleepwalkers, their lips moving with the same word. Myra. Marta clutched my arm. We can't outrun them. We need somewhere to hide. The supply closet was closest. I shoved the door open, yanking her inside. We slammed it shut, plunging into darkness, broken only by a thin strip of fluorescent light leaking beneath the frame. We pressed our backs against the shelves, gasping. The whispers seeped through the door, dozens of voices murmuring in unison. Then silence. For a moment, I dared to hope they'd passed us by. But then came the sound. Breathing. Not dozens this time, just one. Slow, wet, right outside the door. Marta covered her mouth, trembling. I pressed a finger to my lips, urging her to stay quiet. The breathing grew louder, closer, until condensation bloomed across the door's metal surface. A word traced itself into the fog, written by a finger we couldn't see. MYRA. I bit out a cry. Marta squeezed my hand, nails digging into my skin. The knob rattled once, twice, then stilled, and then silence again. We waited. Minutes stretched. Finally, Marta exhaled shakily. "They're gone," she whispered. The moment the words left her mouth, the light under the door vanished. The fluorescence outside had gone dark. A low rumble vibrated the walls. Not thunder, something heavier, deeper, like waves slamming against concrete. I swallowed. It's not just inside the hospital anymore. Marta frowned, confusion cutting through her terror. "What do you mean?" I didn't answer. I pushed the door open. The corridor was submerged waist-deep in water, black and rippling. Papers floated like lily pads. Medical equipment bobbed slowly past. And through the windows lining the hall, I saw it. The storm outside wasn't rain anymore. It was the river itself, swollen and furious, slamming against the glass like it was trying to get in. "Myra." The voice wasn't a whisper this time. It roared through the hospital, shaking the walls, rising from the flood. Marta clutched my arm tighter. "Doctor, that's not your mother." I nodded slowly, dread knotting my chest. "No, it's something worse." The flood pressed higher, tugging at our legs, pulling with the strength of an undertow. Marta clung to me, panic etched into every line of her face. "We have to get out," she cried. "Now." I nodded, though my heart already knew the truth. There was no out. The hospital was sinking into something older, darker, something that had waited decades to speak my mother's name. We waded through the water, pushing against floating carts and drifting downs. The whispers grew louder with every step, layering into a chant that shook the glass. "Myra, Myra." Ahead, the exit doors flickered red with their emergency lights. Salvation. Marta pushed toward them, her breath ragged. "Almost there." I followed, every step heavier than the last. The water clung to me like hands, tugging, dragging. And then, just as Marta shoved the crash bar, the doors burst open. Not to the parking lot, not to the storm, to black water. Endless roaring, swallowing everything. The current ripped Marta from me in an instant, her scream vanishing beneath the flood. I reached out, desperate, but a voice cut through the chaos. Clear, familiar. Myra. In the reflection of the glass doors, I didn't see myself. I saw her, my mother alive, dry, smiling faintly, just as she looked the last time I'd visited her. She mouthed the word again, her lips curving gently, lovingly. Myra. For one heartbeat, I let myself believe it was her. I stepped forward, surrendering to the current. Cold wrapped around me, pulling me under, and then silence. I jolted awake, gasping, coughing up river water onto linoleum. The ER was quiet. No flood, no whispers. The trauma bays were calm, machines humming their normal song. Marta was gone. The only sound was the faint tink, tink, tink of metal. The fire truck sat at my feet, bone dry now, gleaming in the fluorescent light. My initials were carved deeper than ever, as though freshly cut. I bent, hand shaking, and picked it up. The toy was warm, and in the silence of the E, it breathed.